Paris, 1911. At exactly midnight, the streets near Avenue Foch would fall strangely silent. Not because of danger, not because of war, but because people had begun whispering about a woman who only appeared after sunset. A woman with burning orange hair, skin pale as funeral wax, and eyes outlined in black so heavily they looked almost hollow. Sometimes she walked through Paris with 2 cheetahs chained beside her. Sometimes she wore a cloak stitched from raven feathers. And sometimes she carried a live snake around her neck like jewelry. The people of Paris called her many things: a witch, a phantom, a mad aristocrat. But the strangest part was this: she wanted them to. Because Luisa Casati did not want to be loved. She wanted to become unforgettable. And to achieve that, she slowly destroyed herself. Long before Paris feared her shadow, Luisa Casati was simply a lonely little girl born into unimaginable wealth. Her father was one of the richest men in Italy. Their palaces overflowed with silk curtains, marble statues, golden mirrors, and servants who spoke in whispers. But enormous wealth often creates enormous silence. Luisa grew up isolated from ordinary life. No real friendships, no normal childhood, only endless rooms, and the feeling that she was invisible inside them. And when her parents died while she was still young, the silence became unbearable. Suddenly, Luisa inherited a fortune so vast that newspapers across Europe became obsessed with her. But money cannot teach someone how to exist. And deep inside her mind, a dangerous idea had already begun growing. If nobody truly sees you, then perhaps you must transform yourself into something impossible to ignore. She married young, an Italian nobleman, and for a brief moment, society believed the strange heiress had settled into a normal aristocratic life. But normality suffocated her. At lavish dinners, Luisa barely spoke. At parties, she stared silently at people until they became uncomfortable. It was as though she were studying humanity from another dimension. Then, one evening, during a masked gathering in Venice, something changed. The candles, the masks, the theatrical music echoing through ancient halls. For the first time in her life, Luisa realized attention could feel like power. Not ordinary attention, fearful attention, obsessive attention, the kind that lingers in people's minds long after you disappear. And from that night onward, Luisa Casati stopped trying to live as a person. She began constructing herself as a living myth. Paris welcomed strange people, artists, poets, outcasts. But even Paris had never seen anyone like her. She rented enormous mansions and transformed them into surreal nightmares. Rooms filled with black candles, taxidermied creatures staring from corners, velvet curtains blocking sunlight, wax mannequins seated at dinner tables, as though frozen in the middle of conversations. Visitors often described her home as less of a mansion and more of a haunted theater. But Luisa loved it that way. Reality bored her. She wanted every moment of existence to feel staged, artificial, unnatural, as if she were permanently trapped inside a dream, just before waking up. And slowly, the performance consumed her entirely. Artists became hypnotized by her. Painters begged to capture her face. Fashion designers built entire collections around her silhouette. Photographers followed her through Paris like worshippers chasing a ghost. She became one of the most painted women in Europe, not because she was traditionally beautiful, but because she looked unreal, like someone escaping from a nightmare, or entering one. And Luisa encouraged every rumor. She powdered her skin until it resembled death itself. She enlarged her eyes with dangerous belladonna drops, despite the pain, despite the risk. She wore gowns covered in jewels one night and funeral black silk the next. Sometimes she appeared barefoot in freezing weather. Sometimes she arrived carrying exotic birds. Every appearance was deliberate. Every movement rehearsed. Because Luisa understood something terrifying. People forget ordinary beauty, but they never forget fear, mixed with fascination. Yet the deeper she disappeared into performance, the lonelier she became. Behind the extravagant costumes and candlelit spectacles was a woman terrified of becoming invisible again. That fear controlled everything. How she dressed, how she spoke, how she slept, even how she loved. Her relationships became theatrical. People rarely knew whether they were speaking to Luisa herself or to the character she had invented. And perhaps eventually, even she no longer knew the difference. There are stories from Parisian servants who claimed the mansion felt cursed after midnight. They said Luisa wandered through dark hallways, speaking softly to mannequins. Sometimes she ordered entire rooms redesigned overnight because she had seen disturbing visions in dreams. Sometimes she sat beside mirrors for hours without moving. One servant later confessed something chilling. He said the house never felt inhabited by a living woman, only by someone rehearsing for death. But tragedy hides itself well inside glamour. To the outside world, Luisa appeared untouchable, immortal, a queen of darkness ruling over artists and aristocrats. Yet beneath the costumes, her empire was collapsing. Because maintaining a fantasy is expensive, especially when the fantasy becomes larger than reality itself. Luisa spent fortunes faster than anyone believed possible. Jewelry, animals, parties, designer gowns, private performances, entire rooms redecorated after a single evening. She did not spend money like a human being. She spent it like someone trying to purchase eternity. And eventually, even her enormous inheritance began to disappear. The warnings came slowly at first. Unpaid debts, servants leaving, properties sold in silence, friends distancing themselves. But Luisa ignored everything because she believed obscurity was worse than ruin. So she continued performing, even while drowning, even while collapsing internally. She hosted extravagant gatherings while creditors circled outside her gates. She walked through Paris draped in jewels she could no longer afford. And perhaps the most tragic part was this: the world still applauded her. People admired the spectacle, without realizing they were watching someone destroy herself in real time. Transition. Music fades quieter. Then came the fall. Not dramatic, not sudden, just painfully quiet. By the 1930s, the fortune was gone. The legendary parties ended. The giant mansions disappeared. The servants vanished. The artists moved on to newer muses. And Paris, the city that once worshipped her madness, slowly forgot her. For someone like Luisa Casati, that was the cruelest punishment imaginable: to be forgotten. She escaped to London, but even there, she refused to abandon the performance. Witnesses described an elderly woman wandering the streets wearing faded fur coats and dramatic makeup. Her hair still blazing red, her eyes still darkened with obsession. Only now, the glamour looked haunted, like a ghost desperately reenacting scenes from a vanished life. Children stared at her in fear. Adults whispered after she passed. And perhaps, somewhere deep inside, Luisa considered that a victory. Because fear still meant remembrance. In tiny rented rooms, surrounded by old photographs and broken fragments of luxury, she spent her final years almost alone. The magnificent parties were gone. The candlelit halls were gone. The admirers were gone. Only the character remained, and that character had become impossible to remove. Imagine performing for so long that your real self disappears completely beneath the costume. That was Luisa's final prison. She had spent decades transforming herself into living art. But art cannot hold someone at night. Art cannot comfort loneliness. Art cannot answer when silence becomes unbearable. Final transition, philosophical tone. There is something deeply unsettling about her story. Not because she wore black gowns, not because she walked with exotic animals, but because her obsession feels strangely modern. Even today, millions of people reshape themselves for attention. They construct identities, curate personas, edit emotions, perform uniqueness, all hoping for the same thing Luisa wanted over a century ago: to avoid disappearing, to matter, to remain unforgettable in a world that forgets people instantly. And perhaps that is why her story still lingers in darkness. Because beneath all the gothic glamour, Luisa Casati represented a terrifying human fear. The fear that being ordinary means being invisible. Near the end of her life, someone reportedly asked whether she regretted wasting her fortune. Her answer was strange. She did not speak about money. She did not speak about loneliness. Instead, she simply said, "I wanted to become a work of art." And in a way, she succeeded. Long after the aristocrats of her era vanished into history, people still remember the woman with ghost white skin wandering candlelit halls beside wax figures. Artists still reference her. Fashion still imitates her. Photographs of her still feel disturbing even today. But immortality came at a horrifying price. Because the world remembered the performance, while the human being beneath it slowly disappeared forever. Maybe that is the hidden tragedy behind every obsession with fame. At first, people create masks to protect themselves. But over time, the masks begin consuming the face beneath them. And eventually, the audience can no longer tell where the performance ends. Neither can the performer. Because immortality sounds beautiful until you realize it often demands the sacrifice of an ordinary human life. A peaceful life. A real life. And Luisa Casati sacrificed both. Not for love, not for survival, but for remembrance. For the desperate hope that somewhere, decades after her death, strangers would still whisper her name in dark rooms. And tonight, they still do. If stories like this fascinate you, stories about forgotten minds, beautiful obsessions, psychological darkness, and the hidden tragedies history tried to bury, then subscribe to the channel, because here, we don't just tell stories, we descend into them. Comment your answer below. I read everyone. If stories like this stay with you, then this channel is for you. We don't just tell stories, we uncover the silence behind them. Subscribe, because the next story might change how you see everything.